John Gravine.
Hi, my name is John Gravine. I live at 1650 Naugert Drive, and I'm here to make a comment about item number 6C, the awarding of funding for additional DA assistance. Okay, I really think our DA, our assistant district attorneys do a great job. And we were awarded 2 more just recently. And I think they're leaders in their profession. You know, it's really, they're doing an outstanding job. But this needs to be provided by the state of Wisconsin, the additional help that they need. They need to fulfill their obligations. We already went down this road. And I think we can maybe learn from what we did before. We sent them a referendum requesting additional help. And that was just within the last few years. We pay state taxes for services that are to be provided by the state of Wisconsin. They need to fulfill their commitments. You know, this is what we did once before. We used funding for the DA. We paid for it. We did it for a number of years, sent out the referendum, and you know, there's other places that are going through it too. They got the same problem, but does our government know that they need to fulfill these obligations? And why aren't they? And I'll leave it at that. I could rattle on for a while, but it's just sort of frustrating to me. You know, this isn't, why should I be paying twice? I paid to the state of Wisconsin to have them fulfill those commitments that they've made to us. And now you want to take some funding and use it for something the state's supposed to be providing? It's a little frustrating to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Approval of the March 2nd, 2022 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes.
Mask to approve.
Motion by Mass to approve. Do I have a second?
This is Jacobson, I'll second.
Motion made, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Move on to 4A, policy issues discussion, potential committee determination. Consideration of recommendation to move forward with an application to allocate $2 million towards a regional forensic science center medical examiner. So Jessica and Supervisor McEwen will be making a recommendation for us and asking for our support. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a morgue task force or forensic science center task force meeting last Friday, and the discussion was about a grant, the neighborhood grant from the state that we applied for to fund the forensic science center. However, we were not successful receiving that grant. So our discussion during the task force meeting, we came up with a proposal that if Marathon County would invest $2 million out of the ARPA funds towards the Forensic Science Center, it may increase the opportunity for different fundraising from different, like the Green Neck Foundation, and just to show that Marathon County does have some skin in this, and we thought that may improve our ability to apply or get some of these other grants from these foundations. So I'll turn the rest over to Jessica if you have anything to add. With that.
Hello, there it goes. No, thank you, Chair McEwen. You did a great job doing a overview of the project. We're just hoping to have the little bit of extra funding added to it, as he said, to help with fundraising and hopefully to help secure other grant funding for the project.
After I speak here briefly to what I talked with Craig about, then I'll turn it over to you, Lance. So basically, just for this committee to understand, the ask is for,
Fine.
hello? All right, I think we had some interference there, but, so basically what the ask is here from Marathon County out of ARPA funds would be for the 2 million. What they're kind of trying to do is kind of the same thing per discussion with Craig that we did back when we did the pool. We're asking that the community come up with some of this money because of the financial burdens we're bearing at Marathon County. If we could use 2 million of ARPA funds and get the remaining monies from grants and community foundations, am I missing out? That's kind of what we're looking for here, correct?
Yes, thank you. And the proposal would be, the funds would be allocated, but wouldn't be utilized if we weren't able to raise the rest of the funds through fundraising projects. So if we are not able to come up with the rest of the funds, the $2 million that we're asking to be set aside from the ARPA funds would go back into the pot and wouldn't be utilized. But as Chair Booth said, we thought we would take a page out of the playbook from the Warm Water Works Committee that they were given the opportunity to raise half the funds for the pool, and they were successful. So we're at the point where we feel that if Marathon County did commit some funds for this, it may improve our ability to get these funds from the other foundations.
And I'm assuming with this, they're gonna want a number. What is our budgetary number? Obviously, that's plus or minus 20% with the way the economy is now and with the rising costs of building and la-di-da, but what's our budgetary number right now for that center?
They took into consideration having the construction happen 3 years from now, and they had inflation at that time added. So at the high end, it is 8.3 million.
Okay.
And that is for the larger facility. We have two different models. The smaller one is 6 million at the low end. We have a low and a high end of the construction range, and it would fall somewhere in there. The architects purposely added a contingency and added the extra cost to make sure that we would not go over budget for the project. So that should be right on for what the construction would come to. I do have one other question. Since we do have a CIP request for this project already from last year, however, since there's been some changes, we'll have to update that. Can I get approval at this meeting now to get that updated as well, or do you want me to come back to another meeting?
It's not agendized, so I'd rather come back to another meeting because it's not agendized. With that, I'll turn it over to Lance.
Thank you, Chair Boots. The only thing I'd add, I think Jess and Chair McEwen did an excellent job. The only thing I'd add in terms of the ARPA process, and I know you're all familiar with that, but the fact that the request is being made today for staff essentially to prepare the application doesn't change the process that the HR Finance and Property Committee, as well as the full board, ratified, which calls for all applications to be submitted, additional information to be gathered as necessary. Those applications then are brought to HR Finance and Property, and any actual allocation has to be taken to the full board. So you're really just providing the recommendation or the guidance to staff, and this was a request I had, that this is a large priority. It's a large project. It's on the administrator's work plan, but we wanted to take it to this committee after it went to the more task force for guidance that staff will prepare the application. It will go through the same process as all other ARPA requests. So should staff prepare it based on if a positive recommendation comes from this body, we'll prepare that, we'll take it to HR Finance and Property, and ultimately the full board.
With that, I'll turn it over to the committee members with any questions, comments, concerns.
Mr. Supervisor Mask.
This is,
Go ahead, Supervisor Mask.
go ahead, Jeannie.
Sorry. I made the comment at the task force meeting, and I'd like to make it here because I think that some of the supervisors who are here are probably not aware that the county years ago committed $1 million to the Dairy School of Excellence at NTC. And after that, the donations and money came in from all over because the county was committed. And I think this forensics center is really important. I think it's going to prove to be very convenient for the northern half, or at least the northern and northeast half of our state, and help our law enforcement save money. I think it'll save money in the long run. So I think if we commit this money, knowing that if this doesn't go through, it's not going to be used, I think it'd be a really great idea because it's worked before, as we can see between the pool and the farm school. Thanks.
Supervisor Jacobson.
Yeah, I just had a question, and I don't know if this is part of the update that needs to be done to the CIP plan, but if the county commits $2 million, say, to the larger $8.3 million model, how does that, if at all, affect the debt service projections? Are we going to have less debt service than we originally anticipated by doing this? Because one of my concerns when it was initially presented, and I'll just say I'm all in favor of this. You know, I know how badly this center is needed in Marathon County, not just for us, but for surrounding counties. But one of my concerns initially was the cash flow projections and whether this would actually cash flow. And I'm just interested in whether if the county commits this $2 million, if that's going to decrease that principal and interest amount so that maybe we get towards a better cash flow projection, if I'm making any sense.
This is Administrator Leonard, and I think I understand your question, Supervisor Jacobson. Essentially, the goal from the morgue task force, and based on my conversations with Chair McEwen, the goal is essentially to have no debt service if we proceed with, as Chair McEwen referenced, the page out of the playbook of the warm water therapy pool. The $2 million of ARPA funds, along with the other components of what I'll call the capital stack, whether it's the State Building Commission, local health systems, the local community foundations, and even private donors. The goal from that exercise would essentially be to negate the need to borrow, which would leave no debt service, because you're absolutely right. And our projections are conservative for our business plan, but we do not have from those business plans as they currently sit, and we are updating them at this point, but we do not have the ability, I should say, to service all of the debt that would otherwise be required if the county simply went out and bonded for the entire cost of that facility, whether it's the $6 million or $8 million version. So the goal here is to negate the need to borrow and negate the need to service debt through the use of ARPA funds and all those other sources of potential capital. Does that make sense, Supervisor Jacobson?
Yes, it does. And I mean, in that case, I'd certainly be supportive of moving forward with the request then.
I'll move that we go forward, Supervisor Lamont. With the application.
We have a motion on the table by Supervisor Lamont to move forward. Do I have a second?
Second,
Who is the second by?
Mask.
All right, second by Supervisor Masks. Any further discussion? All right, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposition? No opposition. All right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to 5A, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. Sheriff Office Justice Technology Grants related to public safety. Chief Deputy Chad Billup. I don't know. Yeah, that's fine. I guess we're gonna move on to 6A, Sheriff Department Life Saving Award presentation, Chief Deputy Chad Billab. Sorry, if there's no objection from the committee.
If I could have Lieutenant Bolden, Corporal Zanzo, Corrections Officer Burnt. If I could have Lieutenant Bolden, Corporal Zamzow, Corrections Officer Burnt, and Corrections Officer Engel, please come forward. I know we've been in front of this committee a number of times in the last couple of months, showcasing our staff and the work that they do, especially situations where they save the lives of people in our care. I think what this is really driving home is that I have seen a significant shift over the last 2 or 3 years in what takes place within our correctional facility. The acuity of the inmates that we serve, the people that are within our care, require so much more from our staff than we have ever seen before. Issues with substance abuse, mental health, general crisis and stress that takes place within the facility, and then you put a pandemic on top of it, has taken our facility to what I'll call a breaking point in its general daily operation. Our staff have to be on their toes every minute of every day in everything that they do. And once again, they did that. On February 28th, around lunchtime, around noon, our staff were alerted to the fact that there was an inmate hanging inside one of the cells in a shower area. That inmate had tied a ligature around his neck using a towel and a sheet and was unresponsive. Our staff entered into that cell and were able to prop the inmate up and remove the ligature from his neck. That was Corporal Zamzow, if I recall correctly, and Corrections Officer Engel were the ones that worked on that with the assistance of Lieutenant Volden. When this inmate was brought down to the ground, he was unresponsive, not breathing, and CPR had to be initiated. 3 rounds of CPR had to be initiated before any sort of life came back into that inmate. Had it not been for their quick action and thinking, their ability to take the training that each and every one of them have had and put it into practice as professionally as they have done, we would have had a very different outcome on February 28th. Now, what's sad is that I have no doubt that this is going to happen again. This happens on a regular basis, and I would love for this to be the last one we ever see. But that simply is just not our reality anymore. It's a different environment and a different place that our staff work in every day. First and foremost, I want to congratulate each and every one of you on saving a life and for the efforts that you took in order to do that, as well as thank you for what you do every day, because we know that it's an extremely difficult job and environment to work in. So with that, I'll be issuing several awards today. Life-saving awards will be issued to Lieutenant Volden, Corporal Zamzow, and Officer Burnt, and a Sheriff's Commendation to Officer Engel for their efforts on February 28th. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chad. Can we go to 5A, Sheriff Office Justice Technology Grants related to public safety, Chief Deputy Chad Billab. Acceptance of Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant.
Thank you, Chair. So last month, we actually presented to the HR Finance Committee because the Sheriff's Office is going to be getting a lot more grants in the coming months and over the next couple of years. The Sheriff's Office was recently approved to be an alert team for our SWAT team. Now, I'm telling you this is it's a big picture vision for our grants, and then we'll get into the specifics of the J grant. Currently, our dive team and our bomb team are alert level teams, which means that we receive federal and state funding in order to help support those programs. For years, our SWAT team was not a part of that program, but they were recently approved by Wisconsin Emergency Management, Department of Military Affairs for that designation. So HR Finance will likely be seeing more of those grants, but you should be aware that they're out there and that they're going to be coming. Now, in addition to those types of grants, we often will get grants for technology and equipment. One of those grants that we receive is the Edward Byrne JAG grant, and we've received this grant for years. This grant requires approval by a committee and approval by the board to accept it. Back in the day, this grant was $60,000, and it was a shared grant between the City of Wausau Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. And over the years, that dollar amount keeps dwindling. And I believe that we're now down in the area of $13,000 that is shared between the City of Wausau and Marathon County. Now, as you know, we have a forensic lab at the Sheriff's Office that does all the phone technology. The county board approved a position for the Sheriff's Office, and the City of Wausau provides an officer, a detective to that team. So what we've done with this JAG grant is we take that combined $13,000 or whatever that dollar amount is every year, and we put that money back into that forensic lab. It's a shared resource. It's a shared team between us and the City of Wausau and some other smaller partners that are in it, and that's what we would use this JAG grant for. So what I'm asking for today is that the Public Safety Committee approve the acceptance of the JAG grant and move that grant on to the board for approval so that we can officially receive those funds.
Thank you, Chad. Questions, concerns, comments from the committee? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Supervisor Mask, I'll make the motion.
I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Supervisor Pizzoto, second.
Pizzotto with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any noes? Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to A2, automated license plate technology.
So Lieutenant Stewart was supposed to be here today. He has been the head of this project, but unfortunately, he's out at a scene on the west end of the county doing an investigation this afternoon and can't be here. What ALPR technology is automated license plate recognition. You're probably familiar with this when you go through tollways going in between Illinois and Wisconsin, or when you go to Tommy Wash and you get your car washed, and the way that that happens is they read your license plate. There's actually technology available to law enforcement that allows us to use the same type of technology in order to do crime prevention, detection, public safety initiatives. An example I'll use is my college roommate is actually the sheriff of Columbia County, and they have employed ALPR technology, and they were able to assist Wood County in a Amber Alert that was placed because a vehicle crossed one of their cameras. They were alerted, and they were able to intervene. This technology can also be used for things like silver alerts, homicide suspects that might be traveling through the area, as well as other crimes that we would want to investigate. What this technology will not be used for is we are not placing this in our cars. We're not going to be driving around looking for expired license plates, suspended license plates, things of that nature. We're looking to use this for major incidents and crimes for crime prevention strategies. Now, Lieutenant Stewart was able to secure a grant for $50,000 that would provide this technology for 4 years here in Marathon County. And it will be 5 cameras that we still have to figure out where and how we're going to place them, but they can be used for those investigative and public safety initiatives that we have in place. And the beauty is if it's a great program and we like what it's doing, we can do more and we can expand it. Many communities have actually worked with private business and industry who have asked to be a part of the program, and private companies will come on and say, hey, can we join in and we want to be a part of this in order to protect our investments at our businesses and so forth. And that's something that we would certainly consider as an additional partnership moving forward. So we just wanted to brief you and explain and allow you to ask questions about ALPR and how we intend to use it at the Sheriff's Office.
Questions for the Chief Deputy? Go ahead, Supervisor Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this was brought to the HR Finance Committee last month, and the HR Finance Committee asked a lot of questions, and in the end, it was unanimously approved and recommended that we accept the grant. So I just wanted to provide that clarity that the HR Finance Committee has met on it.
Thank you. Anything further from the committee? If not,
Supervisor Pizzoto.
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Supervisor Bizzotto.
So I know there are some concerns in general surrounding this technology, and this is in an early stage of implementation. But I was wondering if you could just speak to whether there will be any safeguards in place to ensure that this technology is not misused. What sort of guidelines you might be considering to ensure that people aren't being tracked in a way that they shouldn't be. So if you could speak to that, I'd be very appreciative.
Absolutely. Yes, we have a policy we are working on. It's almost complete, and it will be very similar to other communities that have this type of technology. We will not be giving wide open access to every member of the office in order to view it. Our 911 dispatchers will have the ability to have access to it because that's where alerts will come in. Things like an amber alert or a silver alert would go straight to the dispatcher, and it won't be all dispatchers, it'll be dispatch supervisors. The same will be with leadership within like the investigations division and patrol division, where they'll be able to do some of the inputting of data, but that will not be done at let's say a deputy level, where they can just go and throw a license plate in and then start doing different things to look, say, for a vehicle. That will all have to be approved. The way that technology works is you are not pulling information straight from the NCIC databases. You are only pulling information on information you put into the system. So now I want to clarify that with something where there is a data dump that we will get from the state daily, I believe it's actually every 4 hours, that will have things like Amber Alert vehicles, Silver Alert vehicles, and that's how that will get entered into the system. That's done automatically for us. But when it comes to just say, I want to put the county board chair's license plate into the system because I want to track where the county board chair is going, that can't happen without supervisor approval. So it's not as though that is something that's going to be open for all staff to do. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I really appreciate that, so thank you. I do have a follow-up question. So how about, do you know, it sounds like you're drafting this policy. Will that be made available to supervisors, and I guess when would that be made available? And then kind of a specific question about what the policy contains. How is historical data going to be treated? Is that going to require a warrant? How long are we keeping this information for? And will the state be able to access the data that you enter?
Great questions. I'm going to try to hit all of them. I hope I remember. So the policy is available to the public at any time. So whether that be a county board supervisor or the public, we can release it. We're actually in the final stages of approving all of our policies, and we want to try to place our entire policy manual on the website so that regardless of the policy, you can come and pull any one of our policies and read it. We have absolutely no issue with that. As far as retention of information, the vendor only retains the data that's in the system for 30 days. We just went through this conversation with them as we work through the public records law and what it means to capture the data and then how long we have to store the data for. So we have a system in place that will allow for that data to be, I'll call it refreshed, where it falls off the system and yet still comply with the public records law. As far as who can access it, no, that is a closed system that we have that just doesn't allow the state to come in. Now, what you can do, And we, in some circumstances, we will likely do this, is you can enter into an agreement with another police agency. So police agency to share information, not a private entity to look at it. And we already do that with all of most of our in-house records that we have, where we have systems where, the example is Langley County. We share very similar systems. We have the ability to look at their data, and they have the ability to look at ours. So that currently takes place, and we would do some of that.
Thank you. I know that was a lot to cover, and you did a great job,
All right,
so I appreciate
thanks.
that.
Anything further for Mr. Billup? Do I have to call you Chief Justice or Chief
Justice,
Deputy?
Chief
Chief Justice, I like
Yeah,
that
well,
too.
that's a
Or El
promotion, so-
Capitan, I would.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So what is the wants of the body on A2? Don't do anything? That's no action. Never mind, no action required, I just seen that too. All right. All right, thank you. So then we'll move on to 6B, discussion of shelter home operations by Chief Deputy El Capitan Chad Billup. Is that better?
Thank you.
All right, all right.
So as you have all likely seen in the media, and some emails have gone out, we have had to make some really hard decisions as it surrounds the juvenile detention facility that the sheriff's office runs. There are two sides to the juvenile detention facility. There is a shelter home and there is a secure detention. The shelter home, as we've reported before, is oftentimes run by either private companies and entities, nonprofits that will come in and provide shelter services, or they're run by human services departments. To the best of our knowledge, there were only 2 sheriff's offices left in the state that were actually running shelter homes: the Marathon County Sheriff's Office and the Brown County Sheriff's Office. We made the decision, because of utilization and staffing and, quite frankly, just the risk, liability, and exposure that we felt comfortable with, that a shelter home was not the right business for the sheriff's office to be running. Now, that doesn't mean that social services doesn't still have a need for that service. They absolutely do. And we've been working with them on trying to come up with an alternative solution in order to provide shelter care services either here in Marathon County or with another partner, and that has been ongoing. The second side of it is the secure detention center. I had reached out to Lance a few months back and told him that we were going to have to make the hard decision, that we were going to have to temporarily shut down our secure detention. And that, again, puts a strain on not only local law enforcement, it puts a strain on social services, and it puts a strain on partners that we contract those services to from across the state. But the reality was, the day that I called Lance, we had 9 vacancies in the corrections division. And if we were to go any lower, that would have meant that we would have had to shut down blocks within our jail, and we would have had to have housed out large numbers of inmates from the jail. That financially would have been huge to the budget of the sheriff's office, and then ultimately what that means is that's huge to the budget of the county. So we made the decision to temporarily shut down the secure detention facility until we could hire additional staff. Now, as of today, we are 13 short. So we were at 9, we're now down to 13. It's important that you know that we've been working with county administration and we're coming up with solutions and opportunities in order to remedy that. Sandra has been working overtime, getting very creative with how we recruit, how we interview, and how we bring people into our organization in order to streamline that. We just recently started a project. It's a new program called Interview Stream, where we are interviewing candidates through technology. So in essence, we record an interview, they record the interview back, and then we have the ability to review their interview and then bring them in for a second round of interviews in the hopes of streamlining it so we can kind of do it on their time, at their convenience, because we know that that's where the world is at right now. We have a number of folks that we have currently in the hiring process. I believe that the jail currently has 4 candidates. Oh, Sandra's showing me now 6 candidates that we are looking to bring on board here as soon as possible. We intend to open the secure detention facility on September 1st because we believe by then we can have enough staff hired, have them trained, so that we can take the staff that we had to bring from the secure center to cover shifts here and place them back over at that juvenile secure facility. So that's where we're at and what we're working towards and hope to have resolved as quickly as possible. We are running into the same issue in our 911 center where I think we're down 9 in the 911 center. So it's been a challenge for us to hire folks. And I know it is for private industry and everyone else right now, but it's been particularly challenging for these 2 divisions.
Any questions?
Question,
Go ahead.
Supervisor Lamont?
Go ahead.
So
Supervisor
where are
Lamont.
these juveniles going then if it's closed?
So we have a great relationship with the Portage County Sheriff's Office. Portage County was willing to rent us a bed, a 1 bed permanently at their facility through September 1st. So the first stop that we will go to is Stevens Point. We will go as far away as La Crosse if need be because they have a secure detention facility, Eau Claire has one, and Green Bay has one. So right now, those are the areas that we're typically going to, but we've been working really closely with social services in order to limit those as much as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Lamont, this is Administrator Leonard. I think your question is a very well-stated one, and just for brief overview, like Chad referenced, Chief Deputy Bill referenced, we're talking about 2 separate sides of the house, for lack of a better term, the shelter home and the secure detention facility. But at the end of the day, the challenges that Chad referenced are the same, and our thought process is similar, and that is we really are trying to make some service delivery decisions. That is not unique to Marathon County. Every county, essentially, when it comes to shelter and secure detention services for juveniles, is left with 3 options, and this is overly simplistic, but they're left with 3 options. 1, you directly provide that service yourself. And as Chief Deputy Billup referenced, that can be done by a sheriff's office, human services department, but by a county entity. The second option is you contract with a nonprofit or some private entity to provide those services. And the last one is you set up an intergovernmental agreement, essentially a contract with another governmental partner. So those options are the things that we're looking at. We started that process with the shelter home. It's been on the administrator's work plan. It was actually on the administrator's work plan several years ago to look at our cost structures and the fees that we would charge, because a lot of the juveniles that we would have at shelter and at secure were juveniles not from Marathon County. So trying to understand what is the appropriate fee structure to have was something we looked at. I believe that was 2017, 2018, and in fact, it had been previous to that as well. But it's more than just fee structures now, because as Chief Deputy Billup referenced, you're really having to make difficult decisions with regard to staff, just like every entity, whether public or private. There's not enough people to deliver all the services we would like to deliver. So we're trying to make sure that we're making intelligent decisions. So as it relates to shelter, we're working through that thought process. What might direct service look like? And also at the same time, what options are available for that indirect provision of those services, whether that's an intergovernmental agreement with another county, or one of the areas we've been looking at is, because we have the facility, this shelter facility that we've utilized, what appetite is out there for a nonprofit or non-governmental entity to come in and to deliver that service? What does that cost structure then look like? And how does that impact the Marathon County budget? So we've been engaging with one of the potential vendors in this field. If we do go that route, we'd have to comply with our procurement ordinance, which the county board just recently updated, but we'd have to put out an RFP for that service. But we just wanted to make sure, again, like some of the other items on your agenda today, circle back and make you aware of that ongoing work that we're doing relative to the shelter home. But as Chief Deputy Bill referenced, that the challenge has moved beyond shelter, and we've been making some operational decisions, administrative decisions with respect to the juvenile detention facility as well.
Thank you.
Chairman Gibbs got a question.
Go ahead, Chairman Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chad, the one question I guess, I think I know the answer to it, is that the number of detainees that we have in the secure detention facility has gone down. But do we have an average number of Marathon County residents that we are now looking to, have in other facilities? And then how many of the potential other county individuals are having to look for other areas since we've got a temporary close?
Sure. As it relates to the secure detention center, on the day that we made the decision that we were going to have to close it temporarily, there was one Marathon County youth in that facility. There were 7 additional contracted beds from other counties, that's really good for us. That's something we want to be in if we can do that. On the day that we closed the center, I believe we had 3 Marathon County youth on that day that we had to find alternative placement for. Actually, social services at that point, unfortunately, has to be a part of that as well. There are a number of things going on right now, legislatively, with lobbying groups, where there is a push to take 17-year-olds and take them out of the adult system and put them back into the juvenile system. If that gains traction, which I think it will, I think there's going to be a move that direction. There are very few states that do it the way we do it anymore. Having a facility like that is going to be critical for us here in Marathon County. So I would say that right now that secure detention facility is something that we really need to hang on to. I think we need to do a really good job of working with our customers, these other counties, in order to build utilization for that facility well into the future.
Just a follow-up and more of a comment.
Go ahead.
WCA has supported, historically supported the move 17-year-olds back into the juvenile system. The hang-up that WCA has always had is the movement to move that back also has to come with additional state funding to guarantee that we're not asking the taxpayers of Marathon County to pay for that portion, especially in light of the levy limits. So, thank you.
Anything further? Supervisor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reference to moving 17-year-olds back into the juvenile, is that for all crimes, or is there different types of crimes that would stay, that they could go to adult court?
I don't know how to answer that question. We had a very preliminary conversation. I happen to sit on the board for the Wisconsin Sheriffs and Deputy Sheriffs. I'm their legislative chair. We met with Badger Sheriffs and their legislative team, as well as a group. I don't even know that they're a formal entity or a nonprofit of any kind that's advocating for that. I think that there's a lot of different options on the table as they look at where to go, how far to go, because I think that there's an understanding or a thought that if we have a 17-year-old that commits a violent crime, the DA's office has the ability to charge that out and waive them into adult court. So that those conversations are taking place. I think that there's a desire to take all 17-year-olds and put them into juvenile detention centers and then have it be a mechanism of the courts in order to waive them to a higher level of care, if you will. So there's a lot of talking going on right now, and it's just getting started. I think they're taking some time while the Senate and the legislature are not convening in order to build that support, and we'll see what happens out of the elections coming up. I think that will have a lot to do with it as well in the fall.
Anything further?
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think we heard about this maybe last month, but you refreshed my memory on how much we're being charged to have these individuals shipped out, and also what we charged. I can't imagine for that low on numbers that it's economically feasible to be having a facility and all the upkeep and everything. If you're looking at restarting this in September, are we going to be presented with some of that financial, some of the financial numbers on that? Thanks.
We, because of our relationship with Portage County, and because we signed a contract that guaranteed a bed until September 1st, we're paying $175 a day to house our kids in Portage County. We charge $160 or $200. It's now $200 a day at our facility when we contract with another county. So unlike adult corrections, there's more that goes into it. There are more services provided. So that's why there's a higher dollar amount when we contract for those bed days.
This isn't a moneymaker for us. You said it's good that we get more people in. I mean, what's our purpose here? To keep the kids local? Is that the goal?
That is one huge component, is keep those kids local, keep them close to their support systems. As far as it is, nothing we do is a moneymaker. The sheriff's office hasn't been real good at selling itself and marketing itself in that regard. But what we like to do is offset our costs so that it makes it palatable for us to have that service here locally, since we know we're going to pay for it anyhow, whether it's somewhere else or we keep it internal.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Anything further?
Supervisor Mass,
Go ahead.
how many other facilities are there in our region, so to speak, besides Portage County?
Us in Portage County, I think the next closest is Eau Claire, and then after that, it's Green Bay. And they're for secure. For shelter, that is largely done by nonprofits now, and those are, they've got shelter care. They've got a number of them all over the place. They can use different, like, group homes and places like that as well. Depends how they're licensed. But those are, again, that's why we struggle a little bit, because that's not in our wheelhouse.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right, thank you, everyone, thank you. 6C, state award of funding for 2 additional assistant district attorney positions to address court backlog and update on potential need for supplemental assistance through county allocated ARPA funds. So you all have the attachments. You can see that the DA's office in Marathon County got 2 additional DAs. And per, just to clarify for Mr. Gravine, so those are going to be funded by the state. So the 2 are being funded by the state, but it's our responsibility to give support staff. So we are going to have to do something with support staff. I don't know what that looks like yet. I'm sure we will be told what that looks like in the near future. But with that, I will kick it off and turn it over to Lance.
I'll be very brief. Teresa and Ruth are here from the DA's office. DA Whetstone can provide additional information, but Chair Boots laid out kind of the factual background well. Very recently, the governor as well as Attorney General were in central Wisconsin to announce a number of things, one of which was additional funding for prosecutors, and as referenced by Chair Boots, those prosecutors, it was 30 across the state, 2 of which are being allocated to Marathon County for purposes of addressing court backlog related to the pandemic. And as Chair Boots referenced, the partnership relative to state prosecution in the state of Wisconsin is the state's role is one of providing the resources relative to prosecutors generally speaking, and as well as some other support. But then the county's responsibility is one of facilities and office support. So with those additional prosecutors and with certainly the court backlog that has resulted from the pandemic, District Attorney Whetstone and her staff put together a proposal for the use of American Rescue Plan Act dollars to support those additional prosecutors as well as to address that backlog. So you'll think of what you're going to end up seeing when it goes to HR Finance is the application for support staff as well as victim witness staff to both, again, take on the work of those temporary 2 prosecutors that were allocated by the governor, but then also address that court backlog. I also present in the courtroom today, or courtroom, history, in the county boardroom is Kelly Schremp, acting clerk of court, and those same concerns exist relative to court staff. So I tried to just make you aware again that we had this state award of funding for the prosecutors. We're going to have an application for the board to consider for assistance necessary through the DA's office, but there's likewise going to need to be a strategy to have some additional court staff, make sure we have court time and court staff available to staff those hearings to, again, the whole goal, address the backlog, move those cases through the justice system. So it's good news, but it's going to follow the same process that we referenced in the conversation relative to the Forensic Science Center. It's going to come before HR, Finance, and Property in the near future. And I don't know, Teresa, if there's anything else you wanted to highlight?
So, there we go. I really appreciate your comments, Mr. Green, and I appreciate the clarification. It is under statute 978-13 that dictates, I guess, who pays for what as far as the district attorney's office goes. So it is statutory. And specifically, it says, all costs related to operation of DA's offices other than salaries of state employees, which has been the source of contention, that there wasn't proper allocation for state-funded prosecutors. So the county was picking that up, which we are grateful for, and I think actually that county support is what laid the foundation for the state to eventually come forward and fund those positions that the county had previously been paying for. The materials, supplies, equipment, and services and facilities shall be adequate and sufficient to fulfill the responsibilities of that office, is how that statute reads. Just a little bit of background about the timing of the prosecutor positions. It actually was a very big surprise to me that the governor did this. I was not given any advanced warning, and I found out the day before he came up here that there was going to be this announcement, or that this was even on the table. I appreciate the mayor reached out to me and said, the governor's coming and he's going to talk about prosecutor positions. And so I reached out to the Department of Administration, who I have a very good relationship with, and said, what in the world is happening? And they said, well, we just found out a couple hours ago ourselves that this is happening. So when positions like this are created, it's not just a matter of you have funding, you're good to go. They actually have to create the positions within the Department of Administration. That also comes with computers that need to be allocated and all kinds of other logistics. So the positions exist. We're not able to post for them yet, but if we had a candidate that we were interested in, we could hire today. So even though the posting isn't official, some counties are able to make offers right now with the approval of the Department of Administration. So if we find a candidate that we are interested in, I would like to be able to make that offer, but certainly staff support will be critical to ensure that those attorneys can function properly. It's my understanding that the basis for the allocation was the backlog as well as the violent crime rate in Marathon County. If you've been watching the news, Chad referenced an incident this morning. I spent 4 hours this morning in a conference room with a sheriff's detective and 2 other prosecutors drafting warrants. It was 4 hours straight of 3 prosecutors trying to get together with a detective who was wonderful, by the way, coordinating at the scene, trying to get information that we need, and it's just, these large violent crimes are incredible to prosecute. So if we want to move those large cases forward, that means those prosecutors are taking up those large files, and that's their focus. And then we have the other cases that are in the court system, which also have to move forward, which are still on those prosecutors' caseloads. So it's just critical that we have both of those things moving. So I just wanted you all to know that it wasn't that I was trying to hide the ball about these prosecutor positions, that it's a wonderful surprise, although, I will tell you that the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association actually was not consulted, and their position has been, right now, retention is extremely important. We are not able to hire above minimum for these 2 positions, which is $26 an hour, $26.70, I think, an hour is our max that we can hire at with no overtime or anything like that. And retention is an extremely, just like for many other people, difficult problem. And there was hope that we could take funds to retain our prosecutors and get more experienced prosecutors across the state. So there is some conflict, I guess, there, but regardless, we're grateful for the positions. We will try to get them filled ASAP, and I have already an idea of exactly what I want to do with them. So any questions, feel free to ask. I just appreciate it being brought forward to the committee to give some background, I guess.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Teresa, and I know that one of the challenges and one of the bottlenecks that we have is the public defenders. Has there been any, because if we add the additional 30 ADAs throughout the state, that's going to put an additional burden on the ability to have the public defenders available. I seen an article yesterday, just in fact, about the big challenges of finding enough public defenders. Has there been any discussion about how to address that shortage on that side?
Not really that I'm aware of. I know that one of the interesting issues is I believe the public defender's salary is right now higher than the prosecutor's salary, and then they increased the percentage or dollar amount per hour in hopes of addressing that. I would say that the biggest issue is when a public defender's office has a conflict and they cannot ethically take a case and it has to be handed out to private bar. It's having private bar attorneys in the area that are willing to take public defender appointments is really the critical issue, and we're taking attorneys from all over the place to take our cases. So actually the state bar candidates for president came and spoke locally here in Wausau, and that was one of the talking points, I guess, was what can we do to attract attorneys in the rural areas to take these cases, and nobody seems to really have a solution. And I don't know how the state gets involved in that necessarily, but what I see is more of the conflict cases where we don't have enough private bar attorneys, and that's why they tried to raise the rate, or did raise the rate, to address that. And I'm not quite sure that's had the impact that they were hoping for, because you just don't have the bodies, right?
What curiosity, what is that number?
I don't even, is it $100 an hour or
I think it went up
$70?
to 100.
Yeah, I think it's $100 an hour. Yeah, Kelly would know, because you have to, facilitate.
Yeah, we were the lowest public defender rate in the nation, as I recall. Was it 40? 40, then to 70, then to 100.
Yeah. And for what, as we were talking about the challenges for prosecutors to get these cases ready, for defense attorneys as well. I mean, there's no such thing as a simple case anymore with all the audio visual stuff. It's crazy.
Any other questions for Teresa?
Matt, this is Supervisor Jacobson.
Go ahead.
Not necessarily a question for Teresa, maybe a question for administration. So as I understand it from the packet, the state is funding these positions with ARPA money, and we would also have to fund support positions, possibly with ARPA money. I think, to state the obvious, this is use of one-time money for positions that are going to be an ongoing need. And I am certainly an advocate of funding the DA's office, as I have been in the past. My bigger concern is that if this is ARPA money, are we going to make some future county board the bad guy when the state money is not there to continue these two positions, and then the county is back where it's been in the past at trying to maintain that staffing level by funding these positions themselves? I mean, that is my concern here, and I don't know what administration's perspective on that is.
This is Administrator Leonard. I don't disagree with, the practical implication. These positions are going to be funded for 2 years. That's my understanding. I see Teresa nodding. So yeah,
Yes.
through the end of 2024. With any position, when it's there, you rely upon it. And I think, as Teresa said, there's a really good rationale for why they're needed. But it is one-time money. And the same thing, the strategy, at least as it's proposed right now, and we haven't had time to really develop a long-term plan, but would be to use those ARPA dollars. Teresa did put together, just to make sure everyone, that I clarified this before. Teresa did put together, she submitted the plan relative to the DA's office for the additional staff. We have a costing on that. We're going to refine those numbers with employee resources just a little bit. But also, like I referenced before, I want to make sure any plan I bring before the board, at the very least, is going to address as many potential bottlenecks, and I referenced the courts before for that reason, to move those cases through. Because like Teresa said, she can add 2 prosecutors, but you're not going to get the bang for the buck for the prosecutors without the office support staff. And we're not going to get the bang for the buck for the support staff and the prosecutors if we don't make sure we have courts that are available, judicial officials that are available to move those cases through the justice system. I give Teresa a ton of credit. They did some reorganization with the creation of the 6th branch and the state funding of additional prosecutor permanent positions that came through recently. Teresa reallocated her staff and changed the way that work flowed. Now there's prosecutors assigned to each of the branches, which I think is a really good process improvement that should help with efficiency, but it's not a silver bullet. We need to make sure we're making good use of these one-time dollars. But your concern about what does this mean long-term and how are we going to address that, I think is very valid. To be very transparent with you, I don't know how we're going to do that.
I guess one thing I would add
and the
to
reason I mention it is because the reason I mention it is because all I'm saying is 2 years from now, I think the county needs to be prepared. You're talking 2 positions. I think you're right there, $160,000 probably at least, plus the support staff. 2 years from now, the county's going to have to be prepared to come up with several $100,000 to keep these positions, and or start advocating the state legislature that when this expires to get this into the budget to permanently fund them so that we're not left holding the bag. You know, I appreciate what the governor is trying to do here, but the fact of the matter is, he's putting us in a position to have to deal with this 2 years from now. So I certainly, you know, support funding the DA's office. I just, and I'm not opposed to moving forward with the request necessarily. I just hope that we really can start planning now for what we're going to do to maintain those staffing levels if we're the ones that are left trying to fund it.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I believe that the governor's goal was to provide these positions to address the backlog with a period of time of 2 years in hopes that that would really make a dent. And so the staffing, I understand, would be for that period of time under these ARPA funds. Any other need that we have, and I don't know if can I be frank about that, Lance? Yeah, that we would put together a permanent position request for any specific position that we're seeking, and that might be included as part of the ARPA to be considered at sort of that same time frame. And, you know, we're still, and I'm just going to say it, we're still waiting for the Superior interface, which takes up one full staff person to enter data in our office. It is an incredible waste of time, and we're seeing the ripple effect of that every single day. And it's been almost 4 years. For 4 years, we've been paying for a staff person to input data. So if we could get that problem resolved, that would free up a legal assistant in our office, which would be a tremendous help. So there are all kinds of collateral consequences of that data not interfacing. And so I'm hopeful that, you know, maybe someday that'll happen and that will help with the legal assistant position. But we understand the ARPA dollars that we're requesting are for 2 years to support those backlog positions that the governor allocated. We understand that. Any other need for a position, we would go through the process of requesting a position separately. So just hopefully that clarifies some things.
I think this is one of those opportunities where we go to the WCA, and I mean, if they see that 30 assistant DAs were needed, I mean, let's be honest, you may catch up, but you're not going to catch up.
No. It certainly
may say
will
it's
help.
gonna catch
It
up, but
certainly will
it's-
help. I can't even express, and the Wausau PD and I think the sheriff's office as well, the speed at which cases are being set for trial, just one after the other after the other. I mean, I'm worried we're going to lose our staff, frankly, but we had a trial just recently that's got moved up because our assistant DA is pregnant. And then there was a short delay, and she was going to be 39 weeks pregnant during the baby homicide trial. So now it got adjourned because we didn't want her going to labor in the trial, but it got adjourned during her maternity leave. So it's just the speed in which these are coming through. It's really a push, and I appreciate trying to get these cases through. So in 2 years, we're going to do a lot, is what I'm saying, I guess. I don't know, it's not going to take care of the problem, but we certainly will be able to do a lot if we can get this rolling, so.
All right, any further questions before we move on? All right, thank you, everyone. Next meeting time, location, announcement, agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring future ideas for future discussion. I guess most of this stuff, I'm not even gonna say Wednesday, May 4th. We will tentatively say that. Who knows what's gonna go on? We obviously have 17 new board members. I think everyone saw that. So this will be our last meeting together until we figure out what's going on there. For that, I guess I'll make a quick announcement for people that are in attendance that were reelected. That remember, we have the meeting on I think it's the 13th. Am I correct in that, Kurt? 19th. I'm sorry, 19th. What about I'm saying the get together, like the training type thing. The 13th. So the training would be the 13th. 9th would be the first board meeting. So with that, I guess I look for number 7. Nobody wants to leave? Everyone's excited?
Move to adjourn, mask.
Motion to adjourn by Mask. Do I have a second?
Supervisor Bizzoto.
Second with by Pizzotto. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Right.
Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.